Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 4 of brand new cherry flavor. I have to think about the title every time I say it. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Immediately come home, and we finally get an answer to this trapdoor thing. Don't get a full answer, but she opens it, and I'm like, oh man, I figured it was going to be some impossible space, and I love me some super impossible space. And so it's like dark pit down there. There's a couch. She turns away, and then the couch turns into the woman that's from her nightmares. And once the woman turns around, she's got like a missing face. I'm like, that's some Silent Hill type of stuff. Maybe Silent Hill / The Evil Within. I guess maybe because it also reminds me of like Laura, who's from The Evil Within. I'm talking about video games here. And it kind of reminds me of something. It definitely feels Silent Hill-ish, but definitely makes me think of like, I think maybe because of like the long black hair, makes me think of like, what was her name? Laura from The Evil Within. Obviously very different circumstances, but it just kind of reminds me of just kind of like that weird, twisted, dark nature of things. So, yeah. Then at the same time, we check in with your boy Lou. He's hired like people to come and check out to make sure there's no bugs. But it's like, yeah, we can only find ants here, and that's about it. And he's like, yeah, what's happened to me, it has to be something else. Then we go to the whole situation of him getting his beans, and there being a giant spider in it. And then immediately I was like, it didn't cross my mind about the spider thing until it bit Jonathan and he got the hard on. I was like, right, she literally said that. It's like, that was one of the things it should happen to him. And the sad thing is, it's Jonathan. It's interesting because this swinging of the double-edged blade I was talking about before, it did not hit her inner circle like I thought it would. Like, I mean, to be fair, it's double-edging, backlashing on her because it's just, I mean, I guess it makes sense because you have to be the conduit, so you kind of have to suffer so that Luke could suffer. But it is more so in his circle because we do find out that Jules isn't dead. He's got like 70% of his body's like burned, but he's not dead. He could die. But now Jonathan's got like this major hard on he's got from this spider biting him. I was almost halfway expecting it to bite Lou, but that's the thing of like, yeah, Lou's life is kind of falling apart because now all that like praise he was getting, like, oh, box office magic. It's like Variety made an article being like, yeah, we don't think that's much anymore. So it's like fires are happening all over the places. You know, I guess to be fair, at least it did give him that stuff from the flower, and you know, Boro did say like it would be an accelerant. It would like things would go at a much faster pace because like I think it was just supposed to be a slow build up, but we went from like 0 to 100 pretty damn quickly. So that's pretty interesting. And so you have Lou meeting with Lisa being like, yeah, this could have happened. And Lisa's actually worried because even I'm like, oh, poor Jonathan. It's not like he asked for, I mean, he even said like, oh, I hate my dad. You want to curse him? Go right ahead. But, yeah, now it's like, yeah, what about that curse? And she's like, curses aren't real, Lou. And he's just like, yeah, I mean, if someone was behind doing all this stuff in my life, I would have to hurt them. I would hire someone to hurt them physically, hurt them really badly because they're hurting me and the people I love. And Lisa's just kind of like, well, if there's anything I have to do, it's like, it's so interesting. It's like, this is what you wanted, but now it's a situation of, I mean, it's so, I think it plays into that weird thing of like, he brought it up earlier in the series, like he was being a douchebag about it, but he was talking about the whole thing about her being like, oh, there was a whole conversation about like, oh, so like what people call you, would people call you selfish for wanting what you wanted? It's like, yeah, and now it's like, oh, now I can potentially get hurt. Yeah, this is kind of going a little too far now because he knows that I'm behind it. I mean, once again, you made it pretty clear to everyone you were putting a curse on this dude, and now some terrible stuff is happening in his life. Of course, he's not going to believe it initially, but he's like, you're doing something to kind of like throw some shade in my life. So hires the two dudes, which I'm like, hey, they're uncle and nephew, right? So it's like, yeah, they're back into it. And even being like, you want us to get rid of her? And he's like, you do that? And he's like, yeah. I mean, obviously no guns. We got like our parole situation to think about. Not parole, but Oh, I think it was something like that. So it's like, yeah, we have that to worry about. And he's like, no, never mind. I was like, that's so interesting. Like, the fact is, it's interesting because you thought about it, even if it was momentary, even if you change your mind, like, that's not worth it. It's like, I'm not trying to kill somebody. I'm just like, I'm trying to figure out what's going on, because if she hurt me, I want to hurt her. Because even there, I said, like, yeah, like, she has a big grudge against you. What do you even do to her? He is like, nothing that's different than the nature of the business, and just like, she just thinks the universe should kind of revolve around her to a certain extent, which, ironic coming from the self-indulgent prick that you are, but, you know. But once again, it's kind of that, like, I guess most recently be kind of like almost like the Allison and Kevin situation in Kevin Can F Himself. I think there's kind of a similar parallel between, like, Kevin and Allison to Lisa and Lou. I think you could draw parallels there. You know, could be me overanalyzing things, but she goes to Boro. It's like, yeah, I need you to stop. It's like, yeah, I can't. Like, it's either, we really didn't get a clarification of whether it's really a you can't or you choose not to. I figure it's like everything's in motion. Like, you accelerated things, like that probably made it even harder to pull back, but it probably is a thing of like, no, once it's set in motion, it's beyond my control. I can agitate and kind of push things along, but it's just like it's in the zeitgeist of like the universe now to kind of play. But I'm thinking she has a lot more a hand to play in all of this than she kind of lets on. She makes it seem like she's so hands off, but it's like, no. Like, every time we turn around, it's like, it seems like you've got your hands just as deep in all of this, but... And then it's like, then that lady walks up, she's like, hey, you're Jennifer, right? And it's like, wait, what? And Boro just kind of stares at her, doesn't even say anything. She's like, I must be mistaken. It's like, yeah, you must have mistaken me for someone else. And it's like, and then, we have, Lisa throwing up cap number 4. And I'm like, okay. And that lady's like, yeah, oh my God, and runs away. And it's like, I'm done throwing up cats. It's like, fine, you don't have to throw up any more cats. I'm like, that doesn't seem like that's going to be true. Like, at first I was like, you're tricking her because she's not going to throw up a cat anymore. She's going to throw up something else, isn't she? That's what I initially thought. But because of this, the thought of like, right, there's this lady that knows Jennifer, like knows Boro, if like, because in her mind, Lisa's like, if I want to get away from this situation, I've got to stop all this, because if I don't, Lou's going to come after me. So to stop everything, she wants to find out more about Boro / Jennifer. So she ends up getting Roy's help. And they go to meet the lady, and I love the lady's just, oh my God, is that Roy? What's Roy doing? Like, oh my, like, you know, here, like, did I win something? It's like, no, ignore him. And like, no matter what Lisa's saying to him, she's like, oh my God, Roy, oh my God. And it's like, but then Roy has to be the one to ask the question. It's like, oh right, you're that lady that was with Jennifer that threw up. And she's like, yes, that was me. Hi, I've been talking to you for like the past couple minutes. You've been ignoring me because you're too focused on Roy. The benefit and detriment of having a movie star there, because you probably wouldn't have gotten to be able to get the answers you wanted if it wasn't for having like a movie star beside you. But also I thought was interesting was like, apparently Jennifer disappeared like 10 years ago, because I'd forgotten about this until Lisa had brought it up, but Boro did say that she used to have a different life, but she did something terrible that she couldn't take back. Maybe it's kind of a similar situation to Lisa. That's why I was like, could it be like I'd thrown it out there as a possibility at first, like, could she be trying to set Lisa up to be the new her? Like, maybe her whole circumstances is a curse of its own right, and she's trying to lift it off of herself by putting Lisa in a position where she ends up taking this mantle and this position from her. Like, maybe it's a thing of like, yeah, you kind of have to pawn it off somebody. Like, you have to go through like a whole ritual thing of putting them in the right circumstances so that they end up taking it. Once again, maybe that those cats have to be a countdown to something. Like, more and more cats she's spitting out, like the more of an I don't know. I'm not sure quite what to expect. But also to find out that Boro / Jennifer has like a husband and kids, and it's like, oh, I lived in the same old house. I got the address and everything. I'm like, dude, that's crazy. So I guess you had to leave your family behind because of that thing of like, what you would have never guessed that she has a family. You thought she would just kind of like, oh, like just the crazy witch this or something. But it's like, no, I guess she wasn't always a crazy witch. Like I said, maybe she made a deal, maybe to deal with the devil, kind of similar that Lisa did. And like I said, maybe that's why she is where she is, and she's trying to pass it on to Lisa so she can go back to her life. Maybe that's the only way to take back what she did is by making someone else kind of do the same thing. Like, it has to, like, maybe this is something that's getting passed down for not generation after generation, but person to person. It's kind of like not the same thing, but maybe it's kind of like that it follows thing bouncing from person to person. Like, it's a curse in its own right. I don't know. Current theory I'm running with, but we'll see. But then, like, Lisa's feeling more and more pain. I was like, is she still going to throw up? Like, what's happening? But she's like, I've never felt anything like this. She gets in the tub, and it turns out she's got, like, at first, it's like, it looked like it's just cracked skin, and it's just like, something's manifesting there, and you're like, what the hell is that? Then she gets out the tub, and it's like a gaping wound, and I'm like, ugh. And then she starts, she starts touching because she expects it to hurt, but then she's like, oh, starts sweeping her fingers across it, and she's like, like, orgasmic sounds coming from her. I'm like, is that supposed to be like a vagina? Like, is that what it's supposed to be? Or am I, like, the way she also, like, she's fingering and sweeping around and just kind of like, oh my god, like, getting so, like, into him. Like, this is so weird. And then a kitten comes from it. I'm like, hey! Also, I figured at some point we're going to double up on kittens, but like I said, maybe at this point things are accelerating super fast, so like now she's going to start spitting more of those suckers out. But now it came out from her side, possibly, like, they never describe, that's why I'm like, I don't know if that's supposed to just be a vagina or not. Like, I don't know if that's like, nah, it's just organs and stuff, but like just the sweeping around it, like maybe it's like a magical vagina, like manifesting on the side of her body or something. I don't know. And then Roy finding out, like, okay, so you've been producing kittens. It's like, yeah. I'm like, that's fascinating. Like, Rory doesn't seem like the most well-adjusted person, too. Like, it seems like he's got some darkness of his own. That's why, like, I mean, once again, it's one of those weird things. It's kind of like that twin, like I brought up, like, everyone just kind of going with the flow of things of, like, it just, like, there's no, like, disbelief. It's just kind of everyone's taking everything in stride. And it's like, it kind of reminds me of, like, Twin Peaks, where it's like, I mean, when you break it down, like, everyone in Twin Peaks is a bunch of it's a town full of weirdos. Like, the most, like, oh, like, this is crazy person is probably, like, Harry. Harry was, like, the most, like, I'm not sure if I believe all this, but then you have, like, Cooper being, like, the weirdest person accepting the weirdness. Like, I would feel like Liz is, like, the Cooper of this. It just kind of like, oh man, all this crazy stuff is like, it's happening. I'm just like, I'm going with the flow. I'm going with the punches. And like, everyone else is kind of like, everyone else is doing that too. Like I said, it's just it's a weird situation. But, obviously, Lisa talks about the trap door, and it's like, for her, it's like the smell and the atmosphere. It reminds, when she closes her eyes, it's like being back in, Brazil, and she's talking, because that also ties into the fact that it's like, even before she said anything, Boro was like, you're from Brazil, right? And it's like, wait, what? It's like, because she's like, how'd you know that? I never mentioned that. Like, that came up in like episode 2, but for that trap door to kind of feel like that. And then she's like, that woman without a face, it's like, it felt like it was suffocating, but it's like that she'd kind of be trapped there, and it's like, well, do you want that? And she's like, I don't know. So, that's interesting. And then her and Roy proceed to do their thing, and she slides his hand to her side, and that becomes a whole scene. Might be the weirdest sex scene I've ever seen. Legitimately. I'm legitimately trying to think. I don't know, that might be out there with, like, the weirdest one I've ever seen. I think it might be. I don't know. And then, like, she wakes up, and instead of it being that wound anymore, it's a tattoo. Oh yeah, zombie dude ended up coming to get it. He busts through, and Roy's almost like, whoa! And she's like, it's in there. Tell Boro I'm fine with back to throwing them up again. And it just kind of stops and almost like, all right, acknowledges it. Which, speaking of zombies, Boro ended up, poor Jonathan ended up becoming our new zombie. I think he's good as dead because his vitals stopped. And she's like, oh, I thought you were dead. But it's like, oh, he's a zombie at this point. Then she injects him with, like, those things she got from the, those tanks at the pet shop. And then, like, she blended him up and then injected them. I'm like, what's the, like, I guess that's part of, like, the zombie spell. But he already seemed like a zombie. So, like, what do you need that for? Because she did send Denise to go to him. I thought something was going to happen on Joel's front. Apparently not. I guess he's already kind of got his just desserts in a sense. So, like, there's no more screwing with him. But I guess, like, this is, like, a harder hit for Lou. It's like, well, your son's going missing. Your wife's not too concerned about it. She's like, like, getting a hard-on in front of your parents is super embarrassing. He's probably, like, going off and getting high. It's like, don't be so suffocated. It's like, how can you suffocate someone that's missing? And it's like, and she's like, why are you so stressed out about it? Because he's believing all this stuff about a curse and he's scared. But then there's the whole thing of, like, the headache he's having at the same time. Like, Lisa's going through what she's going through. He's going through what he's going through. He's saying, like, he's feeling this pain through his eye, which Lisa saw an eye when she was down at the, in the trap door. So much happening, on that front. But at the same time, there's also the fact is that Lisa and Roy had a good time. It's kind of like how'd you get? I was just asking how you good, and it's like, yeah, they're so awkward around each other. It's like, yeah, I missed work and kind of got chastised, but he's like, nah, what we did, it was cool. I was actually going to leave a whole note today. It's like, all it says is Roy. He's like, yeah. Like, it's implied, like, that was, she's like, oh, he's like, here, you can have it. She's like, oh, like, you know, I wanted your autograph, but it was just too awkward to ask. He's like, I know, I felt it, so I like their vibe. I get the feeling Roy's gonna die at the end of this, but it's like, because while she's trying to take everything from Lou, she's getting some stuff in the process to a certain extent, and I think it's just gonna end up, I don't, this definitely seems like the type of thing that will not have a happy ending, but we'll see. I get the feeling like, as I made the Drag Me to Hell comparison, spoilers, Drag Me to Hell doesn't have a happy ending, so I definitely get the feeling like we're going to have something of this, not the same nature, but maybe something of a similar nature. But Lou's goons ended up tracking Lisa back to Boro, which he recognizes Boro from the party where Jules got burned, and is like, okay, don't even deny it. She's like, no, why would I deny it? Lisa hired me to put a curse on you. And then she's playing both sides of the field because she's steering stuff up with Lou. I think it's all part of the plan. I don't know. It's kind of a push and prod because they do have a symbolic relationship. So it's like maybe like helping Lou is her way to kind of jab back at Lisa for, like, you know, trying to bail out, or maybe pushing Lou down a certain route. I don't know, because I guess even Boro has our questions because she's like, yeah, there was something that happened to Lisa before the woods. So I want to figure out what it is. Like, whatever it is, come back and tell me. I fucking love gossip. I love that she said that. And I love the delivery of it. I fucking love gossip. But also, it's like, aren't you magic or not? And like, I love how she just laughs like, haha, like, are you, lady? Because it does seem like some magical stuff of like, you into some very dark stuff. But like giving her, like, it's like, right, you need to know which you need to know who Lisa really is, which I'm like, oh, that's ironic, because that was the whole point of, like, right, when he was running her through, like, having to pitch herself, it's like, tell them who Lisa is, and it's like, that's coming full circle in that regard as well. But also, like, she gives Jonathan that jacket, and it's got a spider on the back. I didn't pay attention. I don't think the other biker has anything on his back. Maybe he doesn't, I just never paid attention, but this one in particular, and it's like, made sure Daddy Dearest didn't see he was there. But it's like, oh yeah, go out, do your thing, Lou. Are you a weak man? Both of you want, like, she wants to master you, you want to master her. Like I said, the symbiotic relationship. I'm so curious what she is going to find out. Because we have hinted to that whole woods thing. It's like, what happened in the woods? And she got cagey about it. And it's like, okay. And it's like, right, for Boro, it's like the only thing she can see is like a bright light. And it's associated when she was like filming her movie, but that's about it. Because I was also the thing, remember, like, Code had asked in the first episode, oh, what about that actress friend of yours? And she was like, yeah, I mess up the people around me. And Code's like, except for me. And I'm like, interesting. I wonder what happened there. Like, did she kill her, bury her? Is that going to be like some of the dirt that, well, as she says, you know, you got to find the dirt. You dig? I'm like, I love the pun. I love the pun. But nevertheless, I'm really interested to see where this goes. Man, this show keeps getting weirder, and I'm there. I'm here for it, man. I love it so much. So I'm really interested to see like how bananas this can get going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.